Yeah, it's interesting. It's unfortunate, but
Yeah.
I'm just trying to pick your brain.
Yeah, man, you should just start a podcast. You ask all the hard questions. Yeah, it's a question I've been thinking about a lot, and I know a lot of people in my industry have been thinking long and hard about. And they make an energy model of your home. And then they tell you, according to this energy model, this is the best thing you need to be doing to improve your home. The reason you need that energy model is because we cannot just eyeball and tell you what is the best thing. Every building being unique, which, we talked about it, means that their weaknesses are unique as well. The way they make this energy model is with a software called HOT 2000. It's made by the government of Canada, and it supports the energy rating program in Canada that's called EnerGuide. Yeah, and likewise, I looked a little bit on your LinkedIn. I hope you don't mind. It's really great to see that you have achieved so much so far. You are inherently a very curious person, and it really shows. I wish you a lot of luck, and I would love to know more what is next and what happens with your new startup and all of that.
Hello, guys. Today we have Arman Mottaghi, a LinkedIn connection and CEO of Proprate.
That's right.
How are you, brother?
Good under the circumstances. I think you and I both know, being as Canadian Iranians, there is turmoil in the Middle East, and our thoughts are with the loved ones who are stuck in the middle of this, and all we can do is hope for their safety and well-being. But yeah, that being out of our control, I think the one thing I can control is just doing what I care about doing, and just making sure that I'm like part of creating a better economy and creating more sustainable economy for people and improving people's health. How are you doing?
I'm doing well. Life's good. Thankfully, my startup is picking up nicely. It's by far the best endeavor I've been to because I've had 3 startups in the past as well. Whoa. Serial entrepreneur per se, but yeah, this one's doing well. Podcast is doing well. I graduated. Summer's coming. There's a lot of reasons to be happy about always, and it's good to trick your mind to, even if there is lack of things to be happy about, you just trick your mind to be happy. And if you can be in a sad moment for no reason or not feel like it, you can be in a happy moment for no reason.
Yeah. It's interesting. So my background is building science. That's the work I do, and we can get into that a little bit. But sometimes these no reasons are simply undiscovered reasons. And one thing that we have learned through this body of literature is that the way that people are inside their homes, it could be thermal comfort or the health of the air that they're breathing in, has a very direct and immediate impact on your mood. So, it's one of those things that I understand is like maybe one of those unknown reasons. But I think as we are learning more about the world surrounding us, we understand that we are part of that surrounding world. And maybe that effect is a lot more intimate than we initially thought.
Wow. I mean, that's crazy.
Yeah.
So the air that we breathe has a direct correlation. It makes total sense. But so you suggest maybe for people that are living their day-to-day lives to have a window open, and especially because we live in British Columbia, I mean, the air is so quality. And so just having that flow coming in, would that be a suggestion you have?
That's the first thing you can do. I live in an apartment that doesn't have active ventilation. So I make sure that I have a window cracked open at given times. In Germany, it's actually common knowledge of how you open the windows and when you do it, even in the winter. They have these processes that are like actually what people have normally know there is that you open the windows for a couple of minutes when the weather outside is cold. You refresh the air. But one of the concepts in the buildings is this idea of thermal mass. So your home, it has like a sponge. It grabs some heat to itself as you heat it up. We all know this intuitively. Like if you are in a basement and you crank up the thermostat, it just takes a long time for it to heat up. And when it's hot, like you cannot really cool it down that easily because it takes in a lot. So what they do is that they open the windows, they change the air, but then they close the windows after a few minutes. The home itself is still warm. It has heat inside it. So you don't feel the kick, the impact of the cold air coming in as much, but you have the benefit of that fresh air being inside. Here, like as you're saying, we have such a healthy outdoor environment, unlike, places like Tehran or Beijing in the past few years, being having a lot of particulate matters and pollutants. So we have the opportunity to just like benefit from the outside air for most of the year. Unfortunately, as you can attest, over the last few years, we have more wildfires. Air can get unhealthy at times. And what we do is focusing on resilience nowadays. So making sure that people have ventilation inside their home that has filtration inside it. So that if your neighbor is smoking, if there is a wildfire, if the outside air is really cold and ventilating it means that you have to lose energy and you have to heat up your home and you have to pay money. There are many strategies you can employ to make sure that the air stays healthy. It doesn't have a lot of particulate matter inside it, but in the meantime, you are not breaking the bank.
Mm-hmm.
Unfortunately, the way we have built homes over the last so many decades, it's not the way that's in tune with that comfort profile. The stuff we have learned over the many years, like the effect that ventilation has on our mood and health and well-being, is more recent research. And now we are like, oh wow, we have to go back and fix a lot of problems. And that comes down to building energy retrofits. It's not just the air, but air is one of the components of doing those building energy retrofits. The other major thing is comfort, which is the heat that you dissipate into the environment and the heat you take in. Again, talking about resilience, we are having more heat waves. And people are now dealing with situations where, unfortunately, it's really devastating. You have hundreds of people dying because of a heat wave, and this is absolutely unacceptable. So that's one other thing that comes into this picture. There's durability of the building. We know that a home is the biggest investment most people have in their lifetimes. And a home is a place where people spend 90% of their awake life, at least indoors, and nowadays after the pandemic, mostly inside homes. And you making sure that that home is free of mold that gets airborne and you breathe it in. You also making sure that rot or mold doesn't start eating the studs of the home and make it unsafe or problematic for you, so that you may even have to move your stuff out until you can get it fixed. Those are really important things. People want to make sure that the investment they make and the reliance they have on having a home is safe. And that's another reason that you may want to retrofit a building, retrofit a house. So many reasons, and health and comfort and air being one of them. But really, I think that's the, going back to the conversation of the things that you can change. For me, that's the area that I'm the most passionate about, figuring out how we can retrofit all the buildings that we have in Canada and beyond to be in tune to all of these knowledge that we have about health and comfort and durability that we have today.
So the question that I have is, what does retrofit mean? What does it mean? So in the base bone of it, what does it entail?
Yeah, I think the name comes from you having already having something, right? And that's where the retro, meaning, the past, and fitting something into what's already out there is a very challenging thing to do. Because if you build something new, and our economy, we always think about new things, like getting new things. Like if this microphone is not exactly how you want it, or it doesn't have a feature, what are you going to do? Throw it out, get a new one from Amazon, right? That's the way we think. But there are many scenarios that's not either not possible or not in the benefit of the society to do that. And then you have to go and figure out, how am I going to retrofit the word, it being that how am I going to bring something new into this shell of something that existed from the past, enhancing its functionality, making it better without just throw it away and make a new one. Why do we need to retrofit buildings in particular? That's also a fascinating question. And it's because we just cannot build enough new buildings to erase the problem. In terms of the amount of workforce that we have, the amount of housing starts that happen, and the population growth, and the new construction market cannot take care of all the buildings. And the buildings that we have standing today they are also, they do most of the things right. They keep the rain out, hopefully. They, people have made them part of their identity. You see somebody is living in a house for 50, 60, 70 years. They don't want to go anywhere. They want to be in their home, but they want their home to be more in tune with their health. And that's where the idea of retrofitting comes in. Now, retrofitting can have many challenges, and in buildings, the challenges are immense. For example, for cars, sometimes people want to you have a 2005 Toyota Camry and you want to put a backup camera inside it. That's an example of a retrofit project. And even in cars, doing that sort of thing is really difficult for the layman. Like, you need to sometimes recruit professional help. Not maybe for a backup camera, you can figure it out, but for other things. And that's why we don't go to the shop and upgrade our cars. Like, we always get the newer models, or maybe it's the economics of it. But if it's that challenging to do it for a car that you have the same exact thing, like a million of the same exact thing. Now imagine how challenging it would be for a house, which is unique. The duplex that we are in right now is one of a kind. It was built in a bespoke fashion. It's like a tailor-made suit. The carpenter came in and they put in these studs one by one, and the permitting process was a one-off thing. And I give it a very high chance that there isn't another duplex like this. Maybe even if you have the same floor plan, it's not built to the same specs as this one, with the same material and with the same defects. And the duct designer wanted to go home and they didn't tape something really well, and you have a mold problem in one place, and the exact same home another place doesn't have it. Everything is so bespoke that this home is really unique. And the challenge comes into, how do you understand this one home and every home like it, which is tens of millions, right? That in our spheres, and give them reasonable, meaningful advice for retrofitting, that you can also apply an economics of a scale to it.
What are some tips that you would give a homeowner so that without maybe breaking the bank per se and going into the full foundations and changing things can enhance and improve the quality of health and life?
As we talked about it, every home is different, right? And over the years, I learned to ask a very simple question. What is the problem? Right? If you have a particular problem in the home, that's the first thing to solve. And it could be that the home is getting too hot, like if it's getting too warm. If it's, you feel, if you smell damp or you see mold in the shower, all of the problems that people have individually, there are solutions for them. I think it's very good to start from somewhere, and over time, just go and do those big things, do those bigger things. Like, don't think about it as a one-off thing, but as a journey. A lot of the parallels we draw is with health. If you are not having a healthy lifestyle and you're eating fast food every day and not really caring about moving your body, saying like, what can I do about it, is kind of like those detox routine, pseudo-scientific, is like, okay, like eat celery for 3 days and nothing else and you will be fixed, right? It doesn't work, right? So when we talk about our own health, we talk about a journey. Okay, maybe today I start going for a walk. Maybe tomorrow I go for a little bit longer. And maybe I start cutting down on the carbs and doing something meaningful. It's the same thing for the home. It's that if I have a problem with overheating and heat wave, maybe today I can learn, like strategize, that if it gets too hot, I'm going to open this window and I'm going to open a window on the other side of the home so that the air has a corridor to pass through and take away some of that heat with itself. And maybe there is sun shining from the south facing windows and I close down my curtains to just like reduce that heat a little bit from coming in. But then the really great strategies is to have a window on the south facing side that doesn't even let the heat inside. And another like strategy is to have the curtains not from the inside, but from the outside. So that, because when I close the curtains from the inside, what happens is that the sun rays comes in, the curtains absorb it, and then they radiate back into the window, but the window doesn't let that ray to go out. So you have this greenhouse effect. That's how we have greenhouses, right? It still warms up my home. It doesn't hit my body anymore, but it still warms up my home. But if I have that curtain from the outside, then it stops the sun from coming in. And just like health, when I'm on a journey for my health, the first question I have is not how much it's going to cost me, right? It's one of the factors in there. But the first question I have is, how is it going to benefit me and my family? And how is it going to prolong my well-being? And then when the cost comes in, we as a society make it easier for people to make healthy choices. The kind of work we do at Properate is in the longer vision, like in the way that we are putting software out there, is exactly around that. Making it easier for people to make the right choice, make it more economical. And we don't have to go really far to see examples of this working elsewhere in the world. I was in Spain a couple of weeks ago, and this random apartment, like 100-year-old apartment in the middle of Madrid, they had triple glazed tilt and turn windows with exterior blinds, the kind of technology that we dream of in Canada, and it's just commonplace there. Because on all fronts, on manufacturing, on policy, people came in and they understood those concepts. They thought, okay, well, we are going to make our windows so great that the noise and dust is not coming in. We're going to put that shade on the outside so that, you press a button, that shade comes down and it stops the sun from coming in. It stops the noise from coming in. In the middle of Madrid, I had the best sleep ever because it's just so quiet. Somebody could have a party next to that space and you couldn't hear it. And it's just because those things have become commonplace. So much so that if you go there and you ask them for the kind of windows that right now you can buy from retail stores in Canada, they will give you a higher quote for that kind of window, because it's kind of like you going to Best Buy and ask for a rotary phone. They don't make them anymore, right? So how do you move the industry? How do you move everybody towards better retrofits? That's the big question.
Yeah. I mean, you touched on a great point that why is Canada so behind then? I just don't get it.
We are, it's interesting because in many ways we are not behind and in many ways we are. It's not that, overall we are. It's just that not everything has been moving in the same pace. It's kind of funny. Have you heard about passive house, the concept of passive house?
No.
Yeah. So it's one of those really intriguing concepts that can you make a home so efficient, so energy efficient that you don't really need to actively heat or cool it. It's very self-sustained in terms of the year-round heating and cooling that it has. You don't need a thermostat. You can, even if it gets really, really cold, you can warm it up with as much energy as you put in a hair dryer. That's how efficient this thing gets. Now, passive house is a German standard, but its origins are Canadian. It passes through Canada. A lot of things are like that. When in the 70s, there was this oil crisis. I don't get to the whole thing, but the oil crisis of the 1970s caused a whole lot of questions from people about how do we make homes more energy efficient so that people don't need as much energy to burn. And Canada was a front runner there. We used punch card computers. I mean, you are in computer science, so you know the story of how these whole things evolved, but we used punch card computers to simulate buildings. The same way that punch card computers were being used to simulate weather, and the same way that they were being used in something like the Apollo program with hand created computers. For some reason, we stopped. The building industry at that point, which was extremely far ahead. We even have papers from the 90s who employed neural networks to better understand the heat transfer that the building has with the earth, when it's under the soil. We were so far ahead in terms of literature and ideas, and for some reason and it could be that it was just the tech that we created early on. We couldn't really marry this past technology with this new things that were coming in without fully severing that connection, and we didn't want to do that. Today, if you want to get an energy rating of your home, which is the first step I recommend everybody do to answer your earlier question about what people need to be doing. You contact somebody who comes to your home. They get measurements of your windows and doors, and they look at if you have an attic, they look at it, they look at your mechanical system, and they make an energy model of your home. And then they tell you, according to this energy model, this is the best thing you need to be doing to improve your home. The reason you need that energy model is because we cannot just eyeball and tell you what is the best thing. Every building being unique, which, we talked about it, means that their weaknesses are unique as well. Imagine I have a balloon in one hand and a duct tape in the other one, and the balloon has a leak, right? If I stick this duct tape anywhere else other than where the leak is, I've done nothing. So I can go and tell you, change the windows, and you spend $50,000 doing that, which is life-changing amounts of money, and your problem is not solved, right? So we need an energy model to tell you, maybe even $1,000 change would have solved this for you. But if you first call a window guy, their hammer is window, and every problem you have looks like a nail to them, so they tell you to buy a window. But when you get an energy model early on, that gives you the right advice. So anyways, back to the conversation. You get this energy model of your home. The way they make this energy model is with a software called HOT 2000. It's made by the government of Canada, and it supports the energy rating program in Canada that's called EnerGuide. But as the name suggests, HOT 2000 was made at a time that the year 2000 was so far in the past, right? Because right now we have a Vision 2030, Vision 2050, right? It's like the software's origins are very old. The challenge that the industry has had so far is if you make something new, it's not gonna fully align with the energy rating process that HOT 2000 has, because it's very complicated. There are many models that go into this process, some of them going back to the 60s and 70s. So again, it really comes down to that, whether you want to just take a sledgehammer and just destroy everything and build anew, or whether you can come in and improve what is already out there. And I think that's the reason that held us back after we were so far ahead. So Properate, us being a software company, we applied ourselves to this problem, and that's one of the very foundational things that we have been doing, making software that is aligned with today's science of health and comfort and durability and well-being of humans inside homes, with all of the latest knowledge we have. But what's funny is that, and this has come from many, many years of pain, is that if you get an energy rating through our software, which is one of the works that our software does, you can export it to HOT 2000. So today's software is still speaking to that 40-year-old methodology and completely connects to it. And now you have a way for the industry to not see change as disruption, but rather an evolution.
That's cool what you guys are doing, and integrating in a way.
Yeah, backwards compatibility on a steroids. That's what I would say about it. Yeah.
Yeah. Well, it comes down to, okay, we were ahead, and in 2000 we made great software, and even in the 70s or 90s we had great engineers and scientists who were ahead of their time. But then now we see people or homes in Italy or Germany just, I guess, as you mentioned, blowing us to the dust. So then, does it really matter if we were ahead at some point? Because now we are not ahead. So then what did they do differently? I'm just trying to get out where we went wrong, what they did differently. Maybe it's the infrastructure, the governance, and how they push these new endeavors to be, in homes as fast as possible. And yeah, it's interesting. It's unfortunate, but
Yeah.
I'm just trying to pick your brain.
Yeah, man, you should just start a podcast. You ask all the hard questions. Yeah, it's a question I've been thinking about a lot, and I know a lot of people in my industry have been thinking long and hard about. I think a lot of it has to do with the way that we focus our attention and resources. It's not that we don't have something or we do have something. It's just that Canada is always something between Europe and the US. And the environments, the built environments in both of them are very different. And for us, it's not always possible to only pick the strengths of both environments in Europe and the US. So in Europe, they have a lot of masonry construction. In Canada and in the US, we have a lot of wood frame construction. When you first come into the industry, one of the things you think about is, okay, why? Why do we build with wood? But then you start to fall in love with the idea. It's very flexible. It's very flexible. Masonry is just hard to modify anything. It's this, rigid materials. In terms of environment, it takes a lot of embodied carbon sometimes to build that masonry structure. And I think we are blessed in Canada to have buildings that are built from wood, which is one of the, closest to the nature materials, natural and, simple to work with. But in the meantime, in the US, their priorities are creating these flexibilities of the way that people build. In Europe, they think about it more collectively, and regulations are more collective in that sense. And we're kind of in between both of the regulatory mindsets and environments. Analogy I have for it is the way that we measure things in Canada. Your height is in feet, but the lengths are in meters and kilometers. And then the temperature is in Celsius. But if you want to bake something, it's in Fahrenheit, right? It's like everything is just, there is this hilarious online chart that goes around. It's like, is it heavy? Well, no. Well, then use pounds. Is it really heavy? Yes. Well, maybe use kilograms. Because we're all in between these two systems, the metric system in Europe and imperial system in the US. Our stoves come from the US, so we need to learn if you want to bake a cake, or if you want to make some food for yourself, how do you operate an oven based on Fahrenheit temperatures? But then our government, caring about being to the newest standards, in the past they got us adopted with metric, and they stuck to it, and it's great. So the temperatures are all in Celsius. So yeah, it's same thing with construction, is that you have these two words that are coming in, and we can't always have the benefits of both of them. But I think we are getting better at understanding how to work with the system, with this mixture of a system. And there is something for our general population to do, and that is to just educate themselves about, in general, what is the landscape in construction. If you just say housing is unaffordable, if you just say, oh, all buildings are crappy, like, oh, don't worry about it, it's just all of them, they build it so cheaply and badly, it's such a shallow take. Like, you haven't really gone deeper in that conversation. And I think as people, when we understand what good looks like, there is no going back. When people start, again, going back to the parallel of health, 300 years ago, if you went to somebody to say, I don't feel well, they would say the humors in your body are imbalanced. Let me, make a cut on your back and bloodlet you a little bit, right? Or if a woman went to them and say, I don't feel well, they're like, well, you're being hysterical, and, we're gonna chain you over there so that you feel better. And then over time, we learned that no, there is science here, and these things were just not true. We also learned what good looks like in terms of our nutrition. So, for example, when I see like a protein powder on your kitchen countertop, it's because we know what good looks like. I think for us as people to learn what good looks like when it comes to our indoor environment, and what good looks like when I am planning to move into a new apartment or townhouse or a house, and create value based on that, not based on a granite kitchen countertop. I think that's going to drive a lot of the change.
Well said. Can we get a full grasp of your story, from the early upbringings and how you even got into entrepreneurship, your education, your time in Iran? There's a lot to unpack, and we didn't unpack because we delve into the topics right away. But can you just give us a summary of that?
Yeah. I moved to Canada when I was 22. I studied urban planning when I was in Iran. I don't know, when you went to university, did you know what you were getting yourself into?
Nope.
Same.
I think most people are like that.
Yeah.
It's unfortunate, maybe.
Yeah. I really do think it is. I really agree with you. I think we learned a lot. I know, you also, were in the competitive parts of, school. In the school, you were at one of the high levels. And I think hopefully it resonates when I say a lot of the times we learn something and we don't know why we are learning this. Right? And it's a story of, I think, all of us. And it's such a tragedy because many times I learned something and then later on I learned why. You learn this complex trigonometry, and then it's okay, what the hell does this even mean? But then I when I was in my 20s, I was coding up some just toy software for myself, and I made this toy software for myself, and I just wanted to make it so that there's an arrow that points towards my mouse wherever it is. I just move it around and it points. And that's where I learned why we learned 3 years of trigonometry, to just understand what a tangent is. And I think that's very unfortunate. But also, I don't know. I'm not in education. I don't know how to fix that. I was going onto this tangent to just say that I got into urban planning in Iran, not really knowing what I'm getting myself into. And I think what was the outcome was that I really started to think deeply about why and how we have made our cities the way they are. And like this one thing that we take so much for granted. That's like, okay, I live here. And if I want to go, for example, see my friend, I have to drive for half an hour or an hour. Like it's such an important thing. Like many hours of your living life is spent on the decisions that people have made before you. And those decisions sometimes came from, frankly, nonsense. Sometimes it came from business interests, like a car company wanting to sell more cars. And sometimes just came from skewed images of the future. There is a 1,200-page book called The Power Broker that, it's one of those kind of cultish books in urban planning, but tells the story of, a New York urban planner, name drop Bob Moses, that Robert Moses, he was known as, he just like amassed so much power and he wasn't accountable to anybody really, even though he wasn't an elected public servant. And a lot of New York was built around his ideas. He wanted to just build big roads and big bridges, and had his own worldview, and just a lot of those things were because of that. While like if he had just thought about like making a bridge a little bit taller so that the buses could go under it, or maybe it was intentional, like there was so much more improvement could be made, like maybe add some bike lanes around, or when you're buying a right of way for something, just buy a little bit more, so that if in the future they want to retrofit, coming back to our word, they have the ability. But no, he had his own ideas and his own beliefs about the word, and a lot of people today are impacted by that. There is a lot of poverty coming from it. People who were in the neighborhoods that actually were, very supportive of them, but just like not very affluent, their homes got bulldozered because it wasn't scenic enough for this person. And that got me thinking a lot about what I see on a daily basis. Even when we're in the universities, we wouldn't really like a study. Just like rebellious kids just out of high school. I don't think my professors have a lot of nice things to say about me if they remember who I am. But I think they at least managed to instill this idea that things go far beyond what you just see and maybe what you ignore. This somewhat repeated itself when I came to Canada, and I wanted to study something related to buildings. Even like going into urban planning was suggestion from my parents, because my dad was in construction and built space was something that he was involved in. And since I was a kid, I would go to the job sites and I would see these big buildings. So I came to Canada. I saw this program named Building Science, and like a lot of people, I had no idea what that meant. I thought maybe it's like civil engineering, maybe it's like architecture. It turned out it was neither of them. It was something in between the two. And what it is and what I learned there was this really fascinating science of what do we even do to make sure that people are healthy and comfortable indoors. And the history of building science is also interesting in its own right. We talked about the oil crisis of 1970s, right? Building science field itself is coming after all of this a little bit. I mean, it has always had roots, but the reason we have a building science program as strong as it is here today is because of the leaky condo crisis. I don't know if you're familiar with that. A lot of people aren't, but older people generally know what the story is there. Is that around the 90s, there was this idea of new materials being introduced in the market and a whole wave of, deregulation, simplification of processes. And what ended up happening was that people were like, I want to waterproof this wall on the house. I'm just going to put some tar paper on it, tar sheets on it. Some really heavily plastic or chemical materials to just cover it and not let any water to go through. What can go wrong? And what happened was that these installations were never perfect because as we talked about it, every house is bespoke. So everything is custom and there is always defects. And what ended up happening was that there was a little bit of water that would either through moisture, through not understanding how moisture moves in the building, or through rain, wind-driven rain, through just not having a proper drip edge so that if the rain is coming from your roof, it's not dripping down, it's just goes around. We all know the frustration of trying to pour water from one container to another, and then it's just using the surface tension to just go all over the place. Now imagine it at the scale of a home. They didn't really think about any of these things, and they built the houses and apartments. And what happened was that water got in. It found its way in. Even in the places it didn't find its way in, well, guess what? You're taking a shower and this moisture needs to go somewhere. Or you are in your home is warm and humid and outside is cold. And we intuitively don't think about this, but cold air cannot hold a lot of moisture. So what happens is that kind of condensate you see on a soda can when you put it on a table, it happened in your wall. Is that the moisture is trying to go out, it's hitting this cold wall, it condensates and it gets wet. And the wet environment is good for what? For mold and for rot. So these things have started eating the wood in the wall, and all of a sudden you wake up in the morning and one of your walls is missing. Right? That was the leaky condo crisis. And going back to the conversation on retrofits, immense pain, enormous pain to solve that problem, because you have built wrong. For many of these houses have been built wrong. What are you going to do about it? You have to go and do a very involved process of fixing these problems. Some of the building science problems actually came from our energy efficiency efforts. So one crisis led to another. Is that after the oil crisis, we started insulating things. You have these really leaky, thin factory floor walls. For example, somebody built with masonry and there's a single glazed window there, and they are dumping a ton of energy to keep this factory warm. But as a byproduct, this heat that keeps passing through the wall, it's drying itself. It's drying the wall. So the wall doesn't have a problem. But now you add insulation inside, and what happens is that wall gets cold. So now you have mold. You have created a problem because you don't understand the science. There is the heat is not getting to that wall anymore because you kind of put a jacket inside the building. and the wall is cold. We learned all of these things the hard way, and it's such an understatement to say the hard way. It was the damages that happened were in the billions, at least a billion, and therefore people took it really seriously to understand building science, and that's why we have a strong building science program in Vancouver that is somewhat unique because of our climate, because of the hard learned lessons. There are folks in the US, in the Europe, all around the world who do this, but speaking of the local context, it's a bit unique. So they understood this building science stuff, and when they understood the immediate problems, like the crisis was resolved, it wasn't averted by no means, it was resolved. They started thinking about other things. Like, okay, well, we have these facilities, we have these academics, we have these students, resources. Let's think about energy efficiency. Let's think about sound, the noise that comes in the building, the health of the air, and all of these things started after. They started now gathering the literature that existed already and started to develop it and evolve it and learn new things. So me, without any clue, I entered this world of building science without really understanding any of this context. But immediately I found it quite interesting, quite fascinating, that how much it impacts me personally, how much it impacts my loved ones personally. And what for me felt strange, maybe not as strange, but a missed opportunity, was the reality that we are not talking to the public enough about this. And it's not anybody's fault. It's just that the advice, like, okay, well, make a pamphlet. Nobody reads the pamphlet. Make a 2-hour session. Like, we are going to lose people. Like, what we need is to show people information at the moment that they need it. And what we need, going back to that idea of this antiquated technology that was being used and it was blocking new technology, is creating new software and new technology. Those two things, get people on board and create new software. And that's where, when I finished my study and came out to the industry, I started to think about all of this and the kind of work that I was seeing. Okay, we designed those drip edge flashings that take care of water in the buildings. I never felt that was like my purpose. Like, that wasn't what I was, I would say, interested in. I wanted to focus on things that are large, like big problems. And counterintuitively, I found that big problem in small buildings. Like, I realized that when I was going to stadiums and, towers that, we would like work on, the projects were large enough that the experts could work on them and they could spend hours. But like small buildings, single family homes, multi-unit residentials, they are by far largest square footage of the amount of built space we have built. They are the largest count, but every time I was involved with one of them, there was this air of uncertainty. Okay, what do we do in this one home? And how do we get to the homeowner, these millions of homeowners, with this emerging new industry, this body of knowledge that is brand new? How do we reach them? And that was the problem I wanted to solve. Um, I've always been a computer nerd, and one of the best advice I got when I was going to school was to not pick a computer science course for my college, because that was the thing I had down. Like I could figure out computers, no problem. Do something else. So that's what I did. And then when I got into this knowledge of building science, I could mix it with what I knew about programming. And there came out Lambda Science Incorporated, which we do business as Properate. That's the name. 2018, we started by making a very simple user interface that helped people who build new construction navigate the new energy efficiency codes. But over time, I found that retrofits, like building retrofits, is such a bigger problem. Like it's an enormous opportunity. Nobody's really deeply looking into like the way I saw it. Nobody like holistically was solving that problem. And that's where we moved towards. So what we did initially was trying to create this, complex building energy rating, energy modeling process. And then over time, like what we learned was that, okay, well, it's kind of hard for the average person to use this. And what we learned was that we didn't have enough focus. So we were focusing on something that a homeowner and a professional can use simultaneously, and it was not really possible to do that. So we're like, okay, well, let's make it easier for the homeowners to use it. If we just ask their home address, how many things can we know about their home? Well, we can know their climate. Maybe if we have some public information, some satellite imagery, like stuff like that, we can harvest some really valuable information from that. And then we can maybe ask a couple more questions about the things they know, because I could ask you, what's the insulation in this wall? And your first answer is, what is what in what? You don't know like the first thing about it. So instead we started really asking pragmatic questions that people understand, but it has a lot of info for us. And then we put a bit of science together, and we realized that just by asking a handful of questions and an address, you can learn a whole lot about a home. We made a white paper out of this. We studied roughly 7,000 homes, and we compared our the accuracy of the assessment we did with these few questions to an assessment of somebody coming on site and actually looking at this home with all their info. And I think the results were astonishing. It was really a moment that, okay, we actually can reach the masses, and on average, we can get really good. We can give really good advice. That is not the point to only have that 10-page questionnaire, but it's the first step for people to take the next step. And it felt so powerful, right? It's like you get this blood work of your home, like this, test result of your home. And with a very good chance, we could tell you that, okay, well, there is potential here. Like you can save a whole lot of money by like fixing a small problem. Look into it. It's not that you will like do it. We don't say go ahead and do it. We say look into it. Maybe this is right for you. So we started talking to people about this. We're like, hey, look, we have this thing. Isn't it really cool? And the regional district of Okanagan-Similkameen, which is north of here, they were interested in giving this technology to their homeowners. So we started a partnership with them and really showed enormous engagement with the homeowners. We had this map of the entire region. We had energy rated the homes according to the public information we had, and the homeowners could go there and they could improve it and they could learn more about their home. And we had, like, whenever we were at an expo there, our booth was the most trafficked one. We had this giant monitor that people could just like see their home and see their neighbors, and they were all talking about how they will go and talk to their neighbors about this. And of course, that's where the momentum started. Today, that product, which we call Properate Homes, is in the hands of the BC government, and it's what is called the BC Home Energy Planner. So if you go to the bchomeenergyplanner.ca, you can use your BC Services card or the address of your home plus some other information to log in, answer some questions, and get some info about the rebates in your home, the rebates your home may be able to get, how your home is doing in terms of its emissions and its energy, generally like a picture of what your home is. And this user journey that we have is a collaboration between us and the government, but it really is, you discover simple things. You have this complex idea, and the real discovery is how simple it can be. And the user journey is the simplicity is that first we give you a report after we ask you the questions. We say, look, this is where your home is right now. And then after that, we give you a plan. We say, okay, we were here. This is the journey to get here. And after that, we give you a checklist. We are like, okay, want to do the next thing? Here is your checklist, step 1, step 2, step 3. These are the things that we think you should be doing. And I'm very happy that we launched this tool provincially just recently. It hasn't even been so many weeks. And it's available to the homeowners nowadays. Now, our company, we are really interested in problems to solve, and we also saw the other side. As I was saying, we were trying to make an interface for homeowners and professionals. Well, here is like, this one is here. Let's talk about professionals. Let's talk about HOT 2000. Let's talk about somebody that comes to your home and has a pen and paper and they use tape measures. Like, what year is this? So the next thing we are going into market, and this has been also over 1 year of development, is called Properate Stride. Stride is a mobile tool that uses LiDAR to scan inside the building, detect features. And then these features we can use to immediately create a equipment sizing and a energy model of the home report, so that if you want to do something in your home, you have that ultimate knowledge of whether what you're trying to do is beneficial in the bigger picture. And the first problem we are trying to solve there is with the mechanical system that people are putting in their homes. Today there's a lot of talk of heat pumps. I don't know if you're familiar with the concept, but it's the idea that you have a reversible air conditioning. So just like air conditioning cools, it can also heat your home in the winter. And the challenge there is that these equipment, whether you want to install a furnace or a heat pump, today they're not being sized correctly in a lot of cases. What's the outcome? Well, if they are undersized, it's kind of like you're trying to fit yourself in a small t-shirt. It's not going to fit. And the challenge with that is just your home is never going to get warm enough or cool enough for you to benefit from it. Or maybe one of your zones, like for example, your bedroom that has that south facing window that's getting a lot of sun, doesn't have a large enough head inside it to cool it down. And that one stays warm. That one doesn't really get the benefits. Oversizing has a lot of problems, and the industry tends to go towards oversizing because they don't want to undersize, so they massively oversize. The first thing is that it lowers the life of the equipment. Now you can modularize this system so that they don't like blast energy, but still, it's you just put in too much into a home that doesn't need it. The other challenges with cooling specifically is that if you don't size properly, the functions of cooling are not going to be optimal. So cooling can be used for dehumidification of your home. We talked about that condensation stuff. I don't want to get too deep into it, but in general, you want to right size your equipment. Not too small, not too large. Just like a t-shirt, you want it to fit. So the problem we are solving right now is to really cut down on the time it takes for somebody to give you a proper sizing of equipment and not just eyeball it. Because right now it's really difficult for people for the professionals to navigate, the regulations and understand everything about your home. So sometimes there are some shortcuts. There may be. We're not here to point any fingers. Obviously, everybody wants to do their best work. And what we're trying to do is to just make it easier for people to do it according to the regulations and according to what is for the best interest of the homeowners. And that's proper, it's right. So homes, on one side of things, getting a lot of traction, helping governments and big organizations make decisions from the top. And then Stride is helping homeowners and contractors give better advice. Going back to the question you had, the thought you had, which is, I think, is the most important thing. Like, we all have to think about that, is how do we, massively leapfrog our build space technology and workforce and know-how in a way that we solve all of these problems, and in the meantime we improve people's lives tremendously, help with their health, create a workforce, the youth workforce, get a kind of a job that is secure, it pays really well, is rewarding because you use your hands. And when all of that happens, there is also this byproduct that we also significantly reduce our emissions. We stay ahead of the curve so that when the rest of the world wants to do something about their heat waves and wildfires and problems that comes from the extreme climate events, the technology we can export everywhere else and make even more money from that domestically. It's all coming down to this bringing everybody on board, from educating the public to getting the industry on board with just better solutions, better technology, and also funneling the government resources, utility resources, into putting their money towards what really matters. They have hundreds of millions of dollars spent on reducing the amount of demand that homes have, because they don't want to build another dam. They don't want to build another pipeline. They want to serve more customers with the same infrastructure they have. So they have as much of an incentive to reduce the amount of energy usage people have. But the kind of processes and tooling that are available in their hands to understand what is benefiting day-to-day people is based on some mathematical modeling, some financial modeling. It's based on a status quo that has solved some problems but hasn't been able to make the big dent yet. When you get all of them in, and you create this coherent force that is about let's fix buildings, let's retrofit buildings, I think we are going to see a huge economical force and a massive improvement in the quality of life of so many people.
I really admire what you're doing here because I truly do see the value. And it's very interesting how nothing like this has been around, because it seems like a no-brainer to have such technology coming out. The question that I want to ask you is, are your parents entrepreneurs as well? Or how did you get this mindset to come to this route?
That's a great question. Yeah, I think my dad, he had his own small business in Iran, and I saw he made it look easy. It's not, right? But he made it look easy, and I think that really helped me have that inspiration. But I also want to highlight that in the world of tech, there is also a lot of bad inspiration, I think. Is that we get a ton of bad advice. We give a ton of bad advice to founders, especially to new founders. Ideas that are not relevant in today's world. And that's how I feel about this. Like, it's my personal experience and people could disagree with this. But I think getting into the field of tech entrepreneurship was a very different experience than what my parents may have experienced. When my dad was making their company, and my mom, in her own field, and our family was always just thinking about, what is the right thing for us to do at this point. And moving to Canada was one of those decisions. But I think when I came to tech entrepreneurship, this idea is think about the world, think about the impact, think about the children and the future. And I think those are really good. Those are really important. I think what I do, I want to have a big impact on the life of a lot of people. But you go in and you're like, okay, you sold me on this vision of not just have a business that is for myself, but have this business that is also going to create a lot of benefit for everybody. What is the common wisdom? What is the knowledge that people put out there to get there? And a lot of that knowledge comes from the Y Combinator of 2007 to 2009, which is this, Silicon Valley based, the Bay Area based accelerator that gave birth to a lot of these big startups, Airbnb, Dropbox, you name it. But the world back then was very different, and it was just a spark in a field that now has saturated the world, in my opinion. So if you go to today's founder in 2025, give an advice that was relevant in 2009, I think you are missing the point, and you're just putting them in the wrong direction. Back in 2009, if you had gone to somebody and say, I'm an app developer, just like how I tell somebody I'm a building scientist and they have no idea what this is, they have no idea what it is. But when you explain it to them, their first thought would have been, wow, you're gonna use a phone to do something other than the calculator and calling? You're gonna make an app that does something, you must be some kind of a wizard. You must be like, like very good with all of these technologies. And people, it wasn't really into the public conscious that there is this new wave of tech revolution coming. So if you were one of the very few people who could make software, specifically apps for mobile phones, were you wasting your time onto something that doesn't have a lot of users? You shouldn't have done that, right? That wasn't good advice back then. Okay, well, let's say healthcare doesn't work for the app I had in mind. Let me go into transit. Let me go into freight, scheduling, some random thing like that, and then see if there is some opportunity for me there. But that was back then and not today. Today, that bleeding edge is not in app development anymore. There's so much app development opportunities. There's so many app developers there. So many apps in the app store. When you sit down with somebody and say, I want to make an app for you, they're like, oh, another app. So why do we tell people this story of Instagram? Now, Instagram, before it was Instagram, it was an app called Bourbon. And it was around rating bourbon in different bars, whatever. And they raised some money with that. And like people just get the wrong idea, wrong impression from what any of that is supposed to mean. Okay, well, I'm going to make an app and I'm going to go and talk to investors and raise some money. It never works like that. And the investors don't really understand those like long walks that you have had away from what is average, what is normal. And they may like kind of try to bring your vision into something that is their safe space. What ends up happening, I think, is that you don't get a whole lot of deep innovation. And with the timelines that people have in mind, 2 years, 3 years, we raise money for 1 year and we go to a next round and we raise another one. You don't have enough time to execute. So you're pushed towards burning faster and working harder and like creating something. And it kind of turns mythical. It kind of turns into something that doesn't really give people a fulfilling, effective, and impactful work that a lot of people set out to have. While, back then in 2009, maybe you could like work on 2 years on something, and then because the field was booming, then you could have a quick exit and then go do something else, which resembles AI today. We hear stories of AI engineers getting poached left and right between these big players and a lot of money going in. But that's what's happening in Silicon Valley. If you want to create, and I know I'm going on a tangent here, but it's like if you're going to create a startup economy, an entrepreneurship here in Vancouver that is inspiring people, like myself that's coming in, and it's inspiring new people, right? It's the people who traditionally may not have thought of themselves being into this mold, or the people who are really motivated to make a mark and they're just looking for proper advice. I think we have to realistically look at what is it that we want to do? Like, what is it that makes us unique? Otherwise, we don't have an ecosystem. We have a carbon copy of an imported vision that really doesn't do anything for us. And even if it gets really successful, like even if there is 1 or 2 successful companies, it will turn into another Vancouver Grizzlies, the basketball team I'm talking about. So as soon as you see some kind of traction or something, there is bigger fish in the US that wants to absorb you. So immediately you get bought, or you get consolidated into something that's not local, because there is no reason, there is no identity for you to stay here. So if we want to give people motivation and inspiration and advice to come to Vancouver, or the Vancouverites who want to be entrepreneurs, we have to talk about what is local, right? What is it that is the essence of starting a business here? After I got all the bad advice of, go and make a hockey stick of revenue growth and go and make the quadrant of your competitors or whatever and go talk to investors, I started to realize that kind of conventional knowledge around how to become an entrepreneur with high impact is not quite true for me. And I suspect that's the case will be for a lot of people when they look at it long and hard. I found that the vision I had, like every time I was talking to an investor, like a venture capitalist, it was kind of an uphill battle. And then every time I was talking to a client, it was such a smooth conversation. And what happened was that eventually it was a lot easier for me to talk to clients and get projects and get money that way than to talk to investors. So we ended up just being a bootstrap company. We never ended up raising any rounds. We became cash flow positive. And the moment that happened, it was like this awakening, this great veil lifted off my eyes of like, wow, like this is possible. Like, I can have a work environment that is employee owned and is employee oriented. And if people want to have a work-life balance, I can offer it to them because nobody's pushing me to go in another direction. And in the meantime, we are doing some really deep innovation. So our angle is not working harder. Our angle is taking the time of looking at a problem that has been overlooked and then creating something that was seemingly impossible before and get benefit from that. While in the meantime, everybody has a supportive work environment and a place that I hope retains and grows the team as time goes by.
I think that's a great point that you mentioned. I've always been bootstrapped, and I'm planning to be also always bootstrapped as well, because I don't see a huge benefit into going to investor round, even if it takes a couple years longer to get to the goal. I think it's well worth it.
That's amazing. That's really lovely to hear. I think, that sort of messaging is not what I conventionally hear people talk about. We should talk more about it. People need to hear, like the people who are coming in fresh. Don't spend as much time into just talking to people who don't know anything about your business or don't have as much of an idea about what you are building, and hope to first appease them so that you get to your customers. Get to your customers first. And then if you have a capital intensive environment, like a hardware startup, like you need money, you need financing, maybe then look into it. I don't know. How has been your experience of bootstrapping? Maybe let's start with that.
Well, in my first couple of endeavors, I've lost decent amount of money. I haven't been positive, but it's good that I've worked in the industry for a bit, so I had the capital to, play around with, sort of gamble with. But
right. In
this startup, I'm well positive in like the first 40 days, which is crazy. So yeah, I think I don't have a capital intensive business model, which helps for sure. But I do understand for people that, it really depends on your goal. So if your goal is to, be very fast paced in 5 years, sell it off, and even, if you want to have an exit, then sometimes you have to be even cash flow negative just to push.
Yeah.
It's like a whole different environment. So I think aligning your goals right off the bat and knowing which path you're going to I'm here to promote bootstrap as you are as well. So
You're touching on a very important point there, though, and that is, I think you were saying, it's not as capital intensive to be an entrepreneur today as it was maybe again 10, 20 years ago. I remember these like dot-com bubble startups. They had like 5 offices, 6 offices around the globe, and massive like workforce. Even if you want to process payments, you need to have people who can do that kind of work for you. But today, just like, I don't know, spin up like a payment processing from one of the many, you're done. It's all automated. But I think, for us, maybe it's just so natural, but like the fact that you can like immediately get into the, the positive cash flow, just like figuring out how to daisy chain some things together without having to have like call up somebody to just like, get you an office, like not have a physical office that like is like people have to drive to and like pay you some money or something physically. Things have really changed, and you can do a lot with very little. It's just whatever, that's the knowledge, like everything that you can put together, that's what matters, not like your access to, some suits. I think that's what you're touching on, and I think that's really true.
it's interesting. This is the first episode I believe I've ever had where I didn't even touch the questions that we've prepared from research, but I'm just going to get into the philosophical aspect of the podcast. What challenges you?
I think for me, starting out, I came to solve a technical problem, and I found it to be very much a human problem, very much a communication problem, and we caring for one another enough to acknowledge and, see. I remember like talking to some manufacturers who were in this crossroads of whether they continue making the things they make or they upgrade their whole supply chain, hoping that maybe there is going to be a market the way that there is in Europe. We talked about the windows in Europe being better. And you sit with them and you look them in the eye and you try to convince them as honestly as you can about the kind of risk there is and the kind of rewards that they are going to have from this and the collective rewards. So you see this excitement of this person who doesn't have to do anything, but it's like if they do it today, if they make an action today, and not 2 years from now, it's gonna be such a bigger impact compared to other people, or compared to the status quo, which is them not doing anything today. So, not to get too computer sciencey, but you have this Byzantine general problem, is that everybody needs to attack at the same time, take the problem on at the same time, so that you have this beautiful improved world, and everybody individually wants to take that action, but they're worried that this might not quite work out. And I think what has challenged me the most is remembering that, is keeping in tune with that, is the fact that the problem that I'm trying to solve on a daily basis, sometimes I get like deep into, okay, well, this is this the right software architecture to have for this thing, or are we like, scheduling our activities properly and planning things. And it's been like one of the things that I think for me is challenging / motivating is just reminding myself and dabbling into that human aspect of the work, hearing people, understanding them, and also responding as transparency and with as much knowledge that we can gather, so that we can solve a problem.
And lastly, what do you think is the meaning of life?
You probably can relate, a lot of time in Iran, a lot of childhood was passed hanging out in the on the streets with the fellow kids, um just playing football or whatever. I remember one day there were some adults there to just supervise and be around, and there was us just idly listening to them, and they were having this conversation about having the right expectations in life, something like that. And one of them said, it's nice if I want to do whatever I want to do. Like, if I could just think about this car getting off the ground, it would have been nice, but I have to taper my expectations. It's not like anything I want happens. And then their conversation moved on, and they started walking, and us kids, we started walking to not fall behind. But then I saw one of my friends is just standing there and looking in a random direction, just not moving. I'm like, hey buddy, let's go. He's not moving, so I'm like, come on, we're gonna fall behind, come on, let's go. And he snaps out of it, and it is like, oh, sorry, I was trying to see if I can levitate that car with the power of my mind. He heard from an adult that this can't be done, and immediately the first thing he wanted to do was to verify for themselves. And I think that's very, very fundamental to us, that a lot of times we hear something is impossible, and it's kind of funny, we have no idea about so many things, scientifically speaking, about gravity, for example. How does it work? We don't know. Why do we sleep? We don't know. But there are a few things we know and we understand in the world, and there are things that we know that are possible, and there are things we are told are impossible. And I think it's very human that when we are told something is impossible, the first thing we do is to try to verify it. A lot of times it turns out to be impossible, but sometimes, talking about conventional wisdom of 100 years ago about what is healthy and what is not, or what people believed in back in the time, that's, people are of certain gender or race or background or age are incapable of doing things. As a society, we learn these things are not true. The things that we're told that are impossible is actually not. Now, I don't want to get into this people who just believe Earth is flat, or just go all conspiratorial. But I think as long as you think about all of the things that can happen and will happen and won't happen, and you're logical about it and you're pragmatic about it, I think the real meaning is to try, and the focus is on try to see if what we are told is impossible is actually impossible.
Arman, it was amazing speaking to you.
Yeah, likewise.
And I wish you all the best in your future endeavors.
Yeah, and likewise. I looked a little bit on your LinkedIn. I hope you don't mind. But I think it's really great to see that you have achieved so much so far. You are inherently a very curious person, and it really shows. And yeah, I wish you a lot of luck, and I would love to know more what is next, and what happens with your new startup and all of that.
Appreciate that. Thank you guys for watching. We'll see you next time.